The crystal towers of Prime had stood for 10,000 years. They reached high into the purple sky like fingers made of pure light. Inside these towers, they lived in peace. They were gentle creatures with blue skin that could change color with their feelings. Their bodies were thin and graceful, built for swimming in the great oceans that covered most of their world. Elder Mathematician floated in his calculation chamber, surrounded by glowing numbers that danced in the water around him. His gills moved slowly as he breathed the special liquid that filled the room. For 3 days now, he had been working on the same terrible problem. The void swarm was coming, and nothing in all their mathematics could save them. The void swarm was death itself. They were creatures that looked like insects mixed with machines. They traveled from world to world in giant ships that looked like dark beetles. Wherever they went, they ate everything. Plants, animals, even the ground itself became food for the swarm. They left behind only empty rocks floating in space. Elder came a voice behind him. It was his assistant, a young whose skin had turned white with fear. The outer detection systems show them entering our solar system. They will be here in 6 days. Skin changed from blue to deep purple. This was the color of great sadness among his people. How many ships? The sensors count over 3,000 vessels, Elder. Each one is the size of our largest city. 3,000 ships. Had hoped the reports from other worlds were wrong. The Rigel colony had said 2,000 ships before they went silent. The vegan outpost had counted 1,000 before their transmission stopped forever. But the swarm was growing stronger with each world they consumed. Send the message to all galactic channels, said. His voice was calm, but his skin flickered between purple and black. Tell them we have studied the swarm. Tell them we know their weaknesses. Tell them we will share everything if anyone will help us. Ha's hands moved over the communication device. The message would travel faster than light to every civilized world in the galaxy. It would reach the mighty who lived as pure energy. It would find the warrior race called the. It would touch the ancient architects who built the great space highways. Surely someone would answer. The message was simple and desperate. This is Prime. We are under attack by the void swarm. We have discovered important information about their biology and technology. We offer this knowledge freely to anyone who will help us survive. Please respond. Time is running short. As the message raced across space, the people of Prime began to prepare for the end. The crystal towers could protect them for a while, but not forever. The swarm ships would surround the planet and rain acid from the sky. The acid would eat through the protective domes that covered their cities. Then the swarm soldiers would come down and hunt every living thing. They were not fighters. Their hands were made for creating beautiful art and solving complex mathematics. Their minds were built for peace and understanding. They had no weapons except small tools for cutting their crystal formations. Against the void swarm, they might as well try to fight a hurricane with flower petals. On the second day, replies began to arrive. The first came from the Federation. Their message was polite but useless. We have received your transmission. The matter is under discussion by our council. We will respond when a decision is reached. The Empire sent a message made of pure thought. Your struggle is part of the physical realm. We do not involve ourselves in matter-based conflicts. The military command was more direct. Insufficient strategic value. No aid will be provided. Each reply was like a knife in hearts. Yes, hearts plural, for had 3 hearts, and now all 3 were breaking. The galaxy's greatest civilizations were abandoning them. Species with technology that could move stars and create new worlds would not lift a finger to help. By the 4th day, the void swarm ships appeared in their sky. They looked like black clouds that ate the light of the sun. The ships began to take positions around the planet. Soon they would start their terrible work. Gathered the greatest minds of his people in the central archive. This was where they kept all their knowledge and art. If they were going to die, At least their learning might survive for someone to find later. We must record everything we know about the swarm, he told them. Their ships have weak points where the biological parts connect to the mechanical parts. Their acid cannot dissolve certain metals. Their communication system can be disrupted with the right frequency. Maybe someone will find this information and use it to stop them somewhere else. The scientists worked through the day and night. They put everything they had learned into data crystals. These crystals could survive almost anything and would keep the information safe for thousands of years. As they worked, more messages arrived from across the galaxy. The collective expressed their sympathy but said they could not spare any ships. The Stellar Brotherhood wished them good luck but had trade agreements to protect. The Quantum Alliance sent their thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers would not stop the Void Swarm. On the 5th day, the attack began. The black ships opened like deadly flowers and began to spray acid toward the planet. The protective domes over the city started to smoke and bubble. In 12 hours, maybe less, the acid would eat through completely. Looked at his people rushing to evacuate the surface cities. They moved their most precious artworks and their youngest children to the deep shelters. But the shelters would only delay the end, not prevent it. As the first dome cracked and acid began to drip through, sent one final message to the galaxy. This is our last transmission. The swarm is here. We die today, but we die with dignity. Remember that we tried to warn you. Remember that when your time comes, you will face this alone, just as we do now. The crystal towers began to dim as power was redirected to the failing shields. Soon, the purple sky would be the last thing they would ever see. In the great halls of the Empire, beings of pure energy danced through dimensions that normal matter could not touch. They had no physical bodies, existing as living light that could travel between stars in an instant. When the message reached their realm, it appeared as a small, desperate flicker in their vast ocean of consciousness. High Luminary As, ancient even by standards, observed the message with mild interest. Around him, others swirled in patterns of gold and silver light. They had been discussing the formation of new galaxies when this small interruption arrived. Another matter-bound species seeks assistance, As communicated through pure thought. They face extinction from other matter-bound creatures. The assembled pulsed with what might have been laughter. Do the insects of one world ask the sky to intervene when other insects threaten their nest? Replied Luminary, her light shifting to amused blue shades. The physical realm has its own crude laws, agreed another. Survival of the strongest, consumption of the weak. Why should beings of pure energy concern themselves with such primitive struggles? As formed his response carefully. These claim to possess knowledge that could help defend against the void swarm. Perhaps this information has value. Knowledge trapped in matter is worthless to us, replied. We transcended the need for such limited understanding eons ago. Let the material universe solve its own problems. The vote, conducted in flashes of light faster than thought, was unanimous. They would not intervene. They returned to their discussion of cosmic architecture, dismissing the desperate cries of an entire civilization as easily as they might ignore the buzzing of a fly. Meanwhile, in the war chambers of the Empire, General On studied the tactical data from Prime with professional interest. They looked like giants made of rock and metal, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed red in the dark. They had conquered 17 star systems through superior military strength and had no patience for weakness. The void swarm consumes another world, On rumbled to his staff officers. His voice sounded like grinding stone. This could be useful to our expansion plans. Colonel Ra, his intelligence chief, brought up holographic displays of the swarm's bioships. Our scientists believe we could capture and study these creatures, sir. Their biological weapons could strengthen our arsenal. And their consumption of the system removes a potential obstacle to our expansion in that direction, added Major. Though we're allied with the Federation, Without them, that region becomes vulnerable. On's mandibles clicked together in what passed for a smile among his kind. Send a surveillance fleet to the edge of the system. Let them observe the swarm's feeding process. Do not interfere, but record everything. When the swarm moves on, we harvest what remains. The idea of helping the never seriously entered the discussion. In culture, the weak existed only to be consumed by the strong. The had failed to develop adequate defenses, so they deserved their fate. If the could benefit from their destruction, so much the better. In the floating cities of the Federation, the situation was more complex. They looked like tall, elegant humans with silver skin and large eyes. They prided themselves on being rational and democratic. Every decision had to be debated by their council of representatives from hundreds of worlds. Counselor read the plea aloud to the assembled representatives. Her voice was smooth and musical, trained in the art of diplomatic speech. The question before us is whether the Federation should intervene in this crisis. Representative from the industrial world spoke first. The economic cost would be enormous. Our fleet would need to travel 3,000 light-years to reach Prime. The fuel costs alone would bankrupt several member worlds. There are strategic considerations as well, added Representative Ara from the border systems. If we engage the Void Swarm and lose, they might follow our ships back to Federation space. We could be inviting our own destruction. But the moral implications, protested Representative from the academic worlds. These are sentient beings pleading for their lives. How can we ignore such suffering? The debate continued for hours, then days. Some representatives argued for immediate action. Others demanded more study. A few suggested sending humanitarian aid instead of military intervention. The decision-making process, usually one of their greatest strengths, became a deadly weakness as time slipped away. By the time the Council finally voted to send a fact-finding mission to assess the situation, the signals from Prime had gone silent. The ancient architects received the message in their dimension-spanning city that existed in 17 different realities at once. These beings were older than most stars, responsible for building the great space lanes that connected the galaxy. They appeared as shifting geometric patterns of impossible angles and flowing energy. Prime Architect Eth examined the data with interest that transcended normal curiosity. The Void Swarm represented a type of adaptive biomechanical intelligence that the architects had not encountered in their millions of years of existence. This species shows remarkable innovation in their analysis, Eth communicated to the assembly. Their mathematical models of the swarm's behavior patterns are quite sophisticated. Secondary Architect formed complex mathematical structures in the air as he responded. Yet they lack the fundamental understanding necessary to combat such a force. Their technology is primitive, their military capabilities negligible. The question is whether intervention serves our greater architectural plans for this galaxy, stated Tertiary Architect. The Void Swarm's consumption patterns could destabilize several key trade routes we have spent developing. The architects considered the problem for what seemed like moments, but was actually several days in normal time. Their consciousness operated on scales that made normal thinking appear glacial. Finally, Prime Architect Eth reached a conclusion. The mathematical probability of successful intervention is below acceptable parameters. The risk of contamination by the swarm's adaptive biology poses a threat to our dimensional infrastructure. We will monitor the situation but take no direct action. The assembly agreed with the cold logic of mathematical certainty. The architects sealed the dimensional barriers around their city and continued their endless work of cosmic engineering, leaving the to face extinction alone. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. The Quantum Alliance debated until their time-dilated discussions outlasted the crisis itself. The Stellar Brotherhood calculated that the cost of intervention exceeded their profit margins. The collective simply stated that their pacifist philosophy prevented them from using violence, even to prevent greater violence. One by one, the galaxy's great civilizations found reasons to turn away. They had appealed to beings who commanded the power of stars, who could reshape reality itself, who had transcended the normal limitations of physical existence. Yet for all their advancement, these civilizations lacked something that perhaps only truly mattered in the darkness between the stars: the simple courage to help strangers in desperate need. As the communication networks carried news of the silence, a strange quiet settled over the galaxy. Everyone knew that a line had been crossed, that a precedent had been set. When the next species cried out for help against an unstoppable force, they would know exactly what response to expect. Nothing. Commander Sarah was drinking her third cup of coffee when the message arrived. She sat in the communications center of Deep Space Monitor Station Bravo 7, a small outpost on the edge of human space that most people forgot existed. The station's job was simple: listen to the galaxy and report anything interesting back to Earth. Sarah had been doing this job for 8 years. She had listened to trade negotiations between alien merchants, diplomatic messages between star empires, and the occasional distress call from lost ships. Most of it was routine. Most of it was boring. But tonight was different. "Commander," called Lieutenant from his monitoring station, "I'm picking up something unusual on the long-range arrays. It's a distress signal, but it's not in any format I recognize." Sarah set down her coffee and walked over to station. The young man had good instincts for this work. If he said something was unusual, it probably was. "Play it back," she ordered. The message that filled the room was unlike anything in their databases. The voice speaking was clearly not human, but there was something about the tone that needed no translation. It was the sound of desperate fear mixed with fatting hope. "Can our computers understand any of it?" Sarah asked. "The AI is working on it now, ma'am. The signal is coming from the Zephyr system, about 3,000 light-years. Wait, here we go." The computer's translation crackled through the speakers. "This is Prime. We are under attack by the Void Swarm. We have discovered important information about their biology and technology. We offer this knowledge freely to anyone who will help us survive. Please respond. Time is running short." Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine. She had heard of the Void Swarm from intelligence reports. They were the nightmare that kept military planners awake at night. An enemy that consumed everything in their path and grew stronger with each world they devoured. "How old is this signal?" "It arrived about 6 hours ago, ma'am. But given the distance, it was sent 5 days ago." 5 days. Sarah's mind raced through the tactical implications. If the Void Swarm was attacking 5 days ago, the battle might already be over, but there might still be survivors hiding somewhere on the planet. "Get me Admiral on Priority Channel," she ordered, "and start downloading everything we have on the Void Swarm from the military databases." Admiral appeared on the holographic display 20 minutes later. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from his days as a ship engineer. Sarah had served under him during the Asteroid Belt Wars, where they had learned that sometimes the only way to win was to take risks that seemed impossible. "Sarah, what's got you sending emergency signals?" asked. His voice carried the easy authority of someone who had made hard decisions in bad situations. "Sir, we've intercepted an alien distress call. The Void Swarm is attacking a species called the in the Zephyr system. They claim to have tactical intelligence about swarm weaknesses." His expression darkened. "The Void Swarm, how reliable is this intelligence?" "Unknown, sir, but the sound desperate. They're offering the information freely to anyone who will help them." "Any response from the major galactic powers?" Sarah checked her communications logs. "Nothing yet, sir. It's been 6 hours since we intercepted the signal, and we haven't detected any fleet movements toward the Zephyr system. Was quiet for a moment. Sarah could see him thinking through the problem like the good tactician he was. The Void Swarm represented a threat to every living world in the galaxy. If there was a chance to learn their weaknesses, it might be the only opportunity they would get. "What do we have available for rapid deployment?" he finally asked. "The 7th Expeditionary Fleet is currently in the system conducting training exercises. That's about 400 light-years from us. They could reach the Zephyr system in maybe 8 days if they push their engines hard." "What's our fleet strength?" Sarah pulled up the tactical data. 12 ships total, sir. 3 light cruisers, 4 destroyers, 2 troop transports, 2 supply vessels, and 1 heavy cruiser. Not exactly what you'd call overwhelming force. Almost smiled at that. "Sarah, when have we ever had overwhelming force? Send the alert to Captain Martinez on the flagship Determination. Full deployment, maximum speed to the Zephyr system. And Sarah." "Yes, sir." "Tell him to pack for a fight. If the Void Swarm is there, we're going to give them a taste of what Earth's children can do." The orders went out immediately. Across human space, emergency signals activated dormant systems and recalled ships from patrol. The 7th Expeditionary Fleet was not the largest or most advanced fleet in human service, but they were experienced veterans who had learned to fight with whatever weapons they could find. Captain Martinez received her orders while her ship was conducting boarding practice in the asteroid fields around Prime. She was a compact woman with dark hair and intense brown eyes who had earned her command by being tougher and smarter than anyone around her. "All ships, this is Determination," she broadcast to her fleet. "We have new orders. Set course for the Zephyr system, maximum sustainable speed. We have possible contact with the Void Swarm." The response from her ship captains was immediate and professional, but Martinez could hear the tension in their voices. Everyone in the fleet knew about the Void Swarm. They were the enemy that had wiped out entire star systems without taking a single casualty. Commander Jackson, tactical officer and Sarah's younger brother, brought up the navigation displays. "Captain, at maximum speed we can reach the target system in 7 days, 14 hours, but we'll be running our engines past safe limits." "Do it," Martinez ordered. "If these aliens have intelligence about swarm weaknesses, we need to get there while they're still alive to share it." As the human fleet began their desperate race across space, word of the mission reached Earth High Command. The reaction was not entirely positive. General Hayes, chairman of the Colonial Defense Force, sent a priority message to Admiral. "What the hell are you thinking? We're talking about deploying a third of our deep space fleet to help aliens we've never met fight an enemy we don't understand." His reply was characteristically direct. "The Void Swarm isn't going to stop with one alien world. If they keep growing stronger, eventually they'll come for us. Better to fight them now with allies than later alone." "What allies?" 12 ships against a swarm that destroyed multiple star systems. "The same 12 ships that held the line at Titan Station when the pirates brought 60 vessels against us. The same crews that cleared the asteroid pirates out of the belt using mining charges and pure stubbornness. Sometimes the size of the fleet matters less than the size of the fight in the fleet." There was a long pause before Hayes responded. "You have authorization for the mission, but if you lose that fleet chasing after alien distress calls, I'll find a way to court-martial your ghost." "Understood, General. But if we don't try and the swarm keeps growing, there might not be anyone left to court-martial." As the human fleet raced through space toward a battle they might not be able to win, the galaxy's major powers continued their debates and calculations. The return to their dimensional discussions. The prepared to scavenge what was left. The scheduled another committee meeting. But deep in the cargo holds of the human ships, Marines checked their weapons and engineers prepared their tools. They were heading toward a fight against impossible odds to help people they had never met. To the galaxy's advanced civilizations, this seemed like insanity. To the humans, it seemed like Tuesday. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zephyr system and immediately knew they were too late. Prime hung in space like a diseased fruit, its surface covered in the black-spreading infection of void swarm biomatter. The beautiful crystal cities were gone, replaced by twisted spires of organic metal that pulsed with sickly light. "Jesus Christ," whispered Commander Jackson from his position at the tactical station on the bridge of the Determination. Around the planet, hundreds of void swarm ships moved in slow, methodical patterns like beetles feeding on a corpse. Captain Martinez studied the tactical display with the calm expression of someone who had seen too much war. "Signal from the surface, Captain," reported communications officer. "It's faint, but someone's still alive down there." The signal, when it came through the translation computers, was barely understandable. Elder's voice was weak and filled with static, but his words hit the human crew like a physical blow. "Unknown vessel, this is Prime. We are the last survivors of our civilization. We are hiding in the deep thermal vents beneath the ocean floor. The swarm has consumed everything else. If you can hear this, please tell the galaxy that we tried to warn them. We have uploaded all our research data to these coordinates. Use it to stop them before they reach your worlds." Martinez turned to her tactical officer. "Jackson, how many swarm ships are we looking at?" 437 bioships, ranging from frigate size to things bigger than our heavy cruisers. Plus, what looks like thousands of smaller attack craft swarming around the planet. "And we have 12 ships." "Yes, ma'am." Martinez was quiet for a moment, running calculations in her head. By every rule of military engagement, this was a hopeless situation. The smart thing to do would be to grab the data and run back to human space with the intelligence. Let the diplomats figure out what to do with it. But Martinez remembered something her old instructor had told her at the Naval Academy. Sometimes being smart gets people killed. Sometimes you have to be brave instead. "All ships, this is the captain. We're going in. Target priorities are the bioships closest to the planet. Our job is to break their feeding pattern and give the survivors a chance to evacuate." The response from her ship commanders was immediate and without question. Captain on the cruiser Indomitable. "Understood, ma'am. Locking weapons on target clusters." Captain on the destroyer Relentless. "Roger that. My Marines are ready for boarding actions." Captain on the transport New Horizons. "We'll get those people out, Captain, one way or another." The human attack began with a tactic that no advanced galactic civilization would have considered. They used their cargo ships as weapons. The transport vessels, loaded with mining charges and construction explosives, dove straight toward the largest swarm bioships like guided missiles. The Void Swarm had evolved over millions of years to fight energy weapons and sophisticated technology. They had never encountered enemies that would ram multi-million credit starships into their hulls just to deliver explosive charges to critical structural points. The first transport, piloted by Commander Sarah Park and her volunteer crew, struck a bioship the size of a city. The explosion tore through the swarm vessel's organic armor and set off a chain reaction that destroyed 3 more ships in the immediate area. Park and her crew were vaporized instantly, but their sacrifice opened a gap in the swarm's formation. "Push through," Martinez ordered. "All ships follow the transports, hit them while they're confused." The human warships poured through the gap, their weapons blazing. They had been right about the swarm's weak points. Where biological tissue connected to mechanical components, the aliens were vulnerable to sustained kinetic bombardment. Human and missile systems, primitive by galactic standards, proved devastatingly effective against targets designed to resist energy weapons. But the swarm was learning and adapting. Within minutes, the remaining bioships began to change their tactics. Organic armor shifted and flowed to cover weak points. Attack patterns reorganized to account for the humans' willingness to sacrifice their own ships. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire," reported Lieutenant Santos from damage control. "Hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. We've lost main engine power." Martinez felt the ship shudder under enemy fire, but her voice remained steady. "Route power from non-essential systems. And Santos, prep the mining charges in Cargo Bay 3. "Ma'am, if we're going down, we're taking some of them with us." Meanwhile, Captain had taken the destroyer Relentless on a suicide run toward one of the largest bioships. His plan was simple and insane. Ram the enemy vessel and deploy Marines directly into its internal systems. "This is to all hands. We're going aboard that thing. Seal your suits and prepare for close combat." The Relentless struck the bioship's hull with enough force to punch through its outer armor. Emergency, bulkheads sealed the breach, but not before 2 squads of human Marines had dropped into the alien vessel's corridors. What they found inside description. The bioship was part machine and part living organism. Walls pulsed with organic material while mechanical systems hummed with electronic intelligence. The air was filled with toxic gases that would have killed most galactic species instantly. But human Marines wore sealed combat suits and carried chemical filters that could process almost any atmosphere. They had trained for combat in environments that would terrify beings from more civilized worlds. To them, the toxic hell inside the bioship was just another day at the office. Sergeant Maria led her squad through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. "Contact front," she called out as swarm warriors emerged from the walls themselves. The aliens looked like nightmare combinations of insects and machines, with bladed limbs and weapons that fired acid projectiles. The Marines responded with weapons that the galaxy's advanced civilizations considered barbarically crude. Chemical explosives, kinetic penetrators, and incendiary rounds tore through the swarm warriors. Where alien technology relied on complex energy shields and plasma weapons, humans used simple physics. Mass times velocity equals dead enemies. "Push forward to the central processing core," ordered. "If these things are part biological, they've got to have something like a brain." Deep in the bioship's core, the Marines found exactly that. A massive organic computer that controlled the vessel's systems. Without hesitation, placed a shaped charge against the pulsing brain-like structure. "Fire in the hole." The explosion sent feedback through the bioship's nervous system, causing it to convulse and lose power. Dead in space, the massive vessel began to drift away from the planet. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human crews fought with a combination of tactical skill and reckless courage that shocked both the swarm and the galactic observers who were monitoring the battle from safe distances. The turning point came when Commander Jackson identified a pattern in the swarm's communication signals. Using the mathematical data, he was able to determine the frequency that the bioships used to coordinate their attacks. "Captain, I think I can disrupt their command structure," he reported, "but I need to get close to their command ship." Martinez looked at the tactical display. The swarm command vessel was the size of a moon, surrounded by dozens of escort ships. Getting close to it would be suicide. "Do it," she ordered. The Determination, already badly damaged, began its final run toward the heart of the swarm formation. Enemy fire tore through the ship's hull, killing crew members and destroying vital systems. But the human vessel kept coming, its weapons blazing defiance at the darkness. At the last moment, triggered the communication disruption pulse. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the battlefield, swarm bioships lost their coordination and began to drift aimlessly. Some even began attacking each other as their damaged communication systems sent conflicting orders. "All ships, this is Martinez," Hit them now while they're confused. Everything we've got." The remaining human vessels, battered and nearly destroyed, poured everything they had into the disorganized swarm fleet. Nuclear warheads, kinetic penetrators, and chemical explosives lit up the space around Prime like a deadly fireworks display. And then, for the first time in their recorded history, the Void Swarm did something unprecedented. They retreated. The surviving bioships disengaged from combat and began to withdraw from the system, leaving behind the first tactical defeat they had ever suffered. Of the 12 ships that had entered the system, only 4 remained functional. The human fleet had suffered 60% casualties, and hundreds of brave men and women had died to protect people they had never met. But in the deep thermal vents of Prime, Elder and his surviving people heard the impossible news. They were alive, and their saviors came from a small blue world called Earth. 6 months after the Battle of Prime, Elder stood in the rebuilt memorial chamber on Nu, the temporary colony world where his people had been relocated. The chamber was smaller than the great halls of their lost, but it served its purpose. Today, he was receiving visitors from across the galaxy, and the message they brought would change everything. The first to arrive was High Luminary Os of the Empire. The being of pure energy manifested as a swirling pattern of golden light, his usual arrogance notably absent. Elder, the luminary, communicated through direct thought transfer. "We have come to express our regret for our previous decision regarding your people's plight." Skin shifted to a neutral gray, the color of careful diplomacy among his species. "Your regret is noted, High Luminary. What brings about this change in perspective?" "The humans," Os admitted. "Their actions have forced us to reconsider our position on material realm conflicts. We offer our assistance in rebuilding your civilization." Before could respond, General On of the Empire materialized through a personal. The massive warrior's red eyes glowed with what might have been embarrassment, though such emotions were rarely shown among his kind. "Elder," On rumbled in his stone-grinding voice, "the Empire wishes to establish formal diplomatic relations with your people. We offer military protection and technology exchange." His color shifted to pale blue, indicating surprise. "This is unexpected, General. 6 months ago, your empire saw no value in our survival." 6 months ago, we had not witnessed the tactical capabilities of the humans, On replied bluntly. "Any species capable of earning such devoted allies represents a strategic asset we cannot ignore." More delegations arrived throughout the day. The Federation offered immediate membership and full reconstruction funding. The Quantum Alliance proposed joint research initiatives. The Stellar Brotherhood presented trade agreements worth billions of galactic credits. Each offer was generous beyond anything they could have imagined. Each delegation was careful to explain how their proposal would benefit both species, but understood the real reason for their sudden interest: fear. The galaxy had watched in shock as a small fleet from an unknown species called humans had achieved what every major power claimed was impossible. They had fought the Void Swarm to a standstill and forced the first strategic retreat in swarm history. More importantly, they had done it for strangers, without any expectation of reward or benefit. The implications were staggering. If humans would fight that hard for aliens they had never met, what would they do for their own species? What would they do for their allies? News of the battle had spread through galactic communication networks like wildfire. The technical reports were almost unbelievable. Human crews ramming starships into enemy vessels, Marines fighting inside toxic bioships, officers sacrificing themselves to protect alien civilians. It read like fiction, but the quantum recordings from dozens of observation posts confirmed every detail. In the halls of the Empire, ancient beings of pure energy found themselves discussing concepts they had not considered for millions of years: courage, sacrifice, loyalty to strangers. The humans had displayed something that transcended mere tactical capability. The military academies added new courses to their curriculum: combat psychology and asymmetric warfare against superior forces. Their generals studied human battle tactics, with the intensity usually reserved for analyzing their most dangerous enemies. The Federation's philosophers wrote endless papers trying to understand the human concept of moral obligation to strangers. Their sociologists proposed new theories about the relationship between environmental hardship and social development. But it was among the galaxy's smaller species that the real change occurred. The colonies, long oppressed by the Empire, quietly established contact with Earth through intermediary species. The Vegan Merchants Guild began offering preferential trading terms to human vessels. Dozens of minor civilizations sent diplomatic envoys to Earth, seeking to understand these strange beings who fought for others without seeking reward. Captain Martinez found herself at the center of this galactic attention when she was recalled to Earth for debriefing. The woman who had led 12 ships against impossible odds now sat in a conference room facing admiral and representatives from every major government on Earth. "Captain," said Secretary General Harrison of the United Earth Coalition, "your actions have created a significant diplomatic situation. Half the galaxy wants to be our ally, and the other half is afraid we might decide to help their enemies." Martinez, still wearing the uniform she had worn during the battle, raised an eyebrow. "Sir, with respect, we didn't go to Prime to make diplomatic statements. We went because people were dying and we had the ability to help." "That's exactly what has everyone concerned," Admiral replied with a slight smile. "The galaxy's major powers have spent thousands of years calculating the costs and benefits of every action. They can't comprehend a species that makes decisions based on what's right rather than what's profitable." "Are we going to change how we operate?" Martinez asked. Harrison was quiet for a moment, considering the weight of his words. "Captain, the galaxy just learned that Earth produces beings who will fly across space to die for complete strangers. That's either going to make us the most trusted species in the galaxy or the most feared. Possibly both." Meanwhile, on Nu, Elder was working on a project that would ensure the galaxy never forgot what had happened at Prime. The Gratitude Archive was more than just a memorial. It was a living record of human sacrifice and alien survival. The archive's central chamber contained holographic recordings of the battle, but also something more precious: personal accounts from every human who had participated. Through careful translation, had preserved their words exactly as they had spoken them. Commander Sarah Park's final transmission, before ramming her transport into the swarm bioship: "Tell my family I died making the galaxy a little bit safer." Sergeant Marius' report from inside the enemy vessel: "These things are tough, but they bleed just like anything else. Keep pushing forward." Captain Martinez's words to her crew during the final assault: "Whatever happens here today, they're going to remember that humans stood up when nobody else would." The archive also contained something that shocked every alien visitor: complete technical specifications of human weapons, tactics, and ship designs. Information that most species would consider state secrets was freely available for anyone to study. When asked about this apparent security breach, his explanation was simple: "The humans saved us not because they were stronger than the Void Swarm, but because they were willing to use their strength for others. The galaxy should understand how this strength works." As word of the archive spread, an interesting phenomenon began to occur. Young beings from across the galaxy started making pilgrimages to Nu to study human combat methods and philosophy. They came from species that had never shown interest in military matters, drawn by something they couldn't quite understand. The luminary academies reported that their energy-being students were asking unprecedented questions about the value of physical existence. Military schools found their cadets studying human tactical manuals with religious devotion. Philosophers discovered that their most brilliant minds were abandoning traditional logic in favor of something they called human ethics. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was a simple truth that the humans had demonstrated at Prime. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is help someone who can never help you back. Elder completed his work on the archive exactly 1 year after the battle. The final entry was his own words, recorded for future generations. Let it be known throughout all the stars that when our people cried out in desperation, when every great civilization turned away, the humans answered. They came from a small world on the edge of known space, and they taught the galaxy what courage truly means. We live today because strangers chose to die for us. This is a debt that can never be repaid, only remembered. As the archive was dedicated, representatives from every major species in the galaxy attended the ceremony. They came to honor the dead and celebrate the living, but they also came to learn, to understand what made a species willing to sacrifice everything for others. The humans who attended were uncomfortable with the attention. Admiral, speaking on behalf of Earth, kept his remarks brief. We did what anyone should do when they see people in trouble. The fact that others find this remarkable says more about the galaxy than it does about us. But the galaxy had learned its lesson. When the next distress call came, when the next species faced extinction, the response was different. The sent energy constructs to evacuate civilians. The deployed their war fleets without calculating profit margins. The voted for immediate action instead of endless debate. They did these things not because their nature had changed, but because they had learned something important. In a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, the humans had proven that the most valuable technology was not energy manipulation or dimensional engineering. It was the simple willingness to do what was right, regardless of the cost. The Void Swarm never returned to threaten civilized space. Perhaps they had learned something from their defeat at Prime. Perhaps they understood that the galaxy now contained a species that would always stand against the darkness. Or perhaps they were simply afraid of what the humans might do next.